All right, guys. Welcome back. Um, in last lecture, we discussed a couple of things. So I would like to quickly recap that. So we discussed how computer works, what is an algorithm and a computer program, with the help of a disease Stephen Hawking was suffering from. So we discussed that how we can employ computational thinking or algorithmic thinking to solve a certain problem. Okay. And then we discussed how to develop a digital system. We specifically talked about developing a system which could turn on the cooler based on if the button is pressed manually or if the temperature rises above a certain threshold value. Finally, we discussed that in this course we are going to learn a Python programming language. Okay, so let's move on with discussing the Python basics. Okay, so computer programs are abundant in many people's life. They are everywhere, carrying out applications on smartphones, tablets, and laptops, powering businesses like Amazon and Netflix, helping cars drive, planes fly, and much more. A computer program consists of instructions, as we discussed last time, executing one at a time. So basic program would have three components: the input, and it's the process, and the output. So input could be anything coming from a file, it could be a keyboard, so whatever you tried, it could be considered as an input. Touch screens, for example, if you're using your smartphones, one of the input form in your smartphone is a touch that you provide. So for example, in order to turn on the camera, um, you tap on the camera app, and as there is it processes something, and then it displays the output in the form of a camera. And then it could be an external signal coming from any other sensors, etc. Once the input is provided to a computer, it has to process it. It could be a simple mathematical expressions like an x plus y. So you provide an input x and y, it performs a mathematical evaluation. And then once the input is processed, it has to display it or it has to produce an output. It could be a display on a screen, or it could be storing something in a file, etc. So a simple program may have we can take an input from in a simple Python program with the help of an input function. So this is a function we will be talking about it later in detail, how we can take an input from a user with the help of a keyboard using input function. This is a very simple input method, taking an input from a keyboard from a user. We can process it, and then we can produce the output, means like displaying the output on the screen with the help of another function, available function, which is called the print function. Okay, so a Python first program would be, let's try thinking about, like, if you're given a task to develop a program that takes the input from a user about the hourly wages, how many hours a person work, how many weeks in a year they work, and calculate the annual salary. So what would you do is take an input. Here we are not taking input, live input, rather we are storing a value specifically. So let's say an hourly wage is $20, and the number of hours a person is allowed to work is 40, and then the total number of weeks in a year is 52. So how we can calculate the annual salary? Simply a simple mathematical expression that would multiply the total number of weeks in a year, total number of hours in a week, and multiply the actual wage per hour. Okay, so it would be simply be an expression, wage times hours times week, and that is what we call a processing. So we have the input in the form of wage, hours, and weeks, and then we are processing this input, multiplying these three values, and storing it in an entity or an object called salary. I'll be talking about it, what this is called, generally called in a programming language. So once we calculate this and store the results in another separate object called salary. Now we have taken an input, we have processed the input, now we have to produce an output. So we can produce an output, as I said in the previous slide, we can produce an output with the help of a print function. So here we could have simply produce the number as an output on the screen by just passing the value of salary within this function. Here we chose to write a meaningful message. So when something output appears on your screen, it should display a meaningful message. So it would display something like this: salary is 41,600. It could be dollar, it could be rupees, or whatever. Okay, so meaningful message is an optional thing, but it's a good practice that you should always include this statement about telling what is the output about. Okay, now moving on, what we choose to do now is we are updating the hourly wages here, so the total number of hours. So here, instead of 40, we are using 35 hours a week, and based on this new information or the updated information, we have to calculate the salary again. So here we have to perform the procedure again. We have to recalculate the thing based on the new value of total number of hours in a week. Okay, so what we are doing here is we are calculating the same expression again, and we are storing the results in the same entity or same object that we have used before. So what will happen is the previously calculated value, which was stored in salary object, will now be overwritten in this line number 9. Okay, so now when we run the print statement, the same statement that we have run in line number 5, it would produce the new value, 36,400, based on the updated value of total number of hours, weekly hours. Okay, so do not panic, stay patient. This is a very brief glimpse of how a Python program would look like. We will be developing this program gradually later on, but this is just to show you how a Python program looks like and how you can simply transform your daily routine task into a programming language. Okay, now in order to proceed ahead developing our own program, we need to have Python set up on our own computer. So if you're using Unix or Linux machines like Macintosh operating systems, or like if you're using a Linux operating systems, you probably would have already installed the Python. It already comes with the operating system. If you're using Windows, you need to make sure that if you already have it installed, but I believe that the new Windows operating system have the Python already installed. But in case if it is not installed, you can install the latest version, which is Python 3, from this link. Okay, and the next thing is download development environment and configure it. We'll be talking about it later, but first I would like to ask you, if you were given a task, a simple task, like when you were applying for a university or you were sending a scholarship application, what would you do? You would create a document, you would write a draft, and if you were using a computer, what platform or what application will you choose to write an application on? Or suppose if I ask you to write a passage about yourself on a computer, so naturally maybe you would choose to use Microsoft Office. So for example, here, so Microsoft Office, you would start writing, my name is, let's say, Sunbeg, and I am a professor of computer science and engineering. So here I also have made a mistake and it automatically corrected it. So this is the beauty of this application, this development platform. I would say development platform for writing or developing what is it called, a document, text document. Okay, so we have to use a certain application in order to develop something. Okay, so similarly, if I were to give you a task of writing a Python program, what would you do? You cannot write a Python program in Microsoft Word or any other like text application. You need to have a specific development environment which supports Python syntax, like which understands Python syntax. Whatever you write as a code, it should be able to identify whether whatever you're writing is correct or wrong. And sometimes some powerful applications are able to correct any error by itself, or points out at least that there is a problem in this particular statement. So we'll be talking about it. So just know that in order to write a document, you need to have an application. Similarly, in order to write a Python program, you also need a separate application to write a Python code. Okay. Um, so assuming that if we have a Python installed, and how can we run Python program? So there is a program called Python Interpreter that executes code written in the Python programming language. And there are two ways of executing Python program. One is the interactive session using terminal. So as same as you navigate through your computer, your file system, if you're using Windows operating system, you would want to bring your cursor to my computer, and then you can explore files, go to the documents, download, all with the help of mouse or with the help of your keyboard, and it's a graphical user interface. There is also a program available on each computer in your operating system which allows you to navigate through your computer, the entire computer, with the help of a textual-based programming language, textual-based platform that is often called terminal on a Mac OS or Linux operating system, and usually it is called as command prompt in the Windows operating system. So what you can do is open a terminal. If you're using a Mac OS, I'm using a Mac OS, I would be demonstrating it on a terminal. So you can open the terminal, and then you write Python 3 to invoke the Python 3 interpreter. Okay, or you can, depending on how the Python 3 is installed, you might sometimes need to write Python 3 or simply Python, depending on if you have multiple versions of Python installed on your computer. Okay, so when you open the terminal, you would see an interface like this. So here, for example, it says that Python 3 I type, and it invokes the Python interpreter interface. So it actually allows you to execute Python commands one at a time. Okay, and this is the generic terminal prompt in Mac. It is different for Windows or Linux. You don't have to type this. All what you need to type the commands after this generic command prompt. It could be a $sign, it could be this, and when you type Python 3, your interface would change into these three arrows. Okay, so this was one way of running a Python program. Another way of running Python program is by writing scripts, as same as you develop a document or application document as a separate script and store it on your computer. So the difference between the running the Python program in an interactive session using this method is that you can execute one instruction at a time. But when you come out of this interpreter, you lose everything. Like whatever you executed line by line, it would have been lost. Okay, it would completely vanish from the memory. The another thing is that, so many a times, in fact 99% of the time, you would be interested in actually developing a Python program and store it in a computer so that you can execute that program later on as many times as you want. So what you would do is you would simply write a Python program in a separate script and then save it on a computer with the help of .py extension. As same as when you're writing a document, a Word document, the Word document is saved with .doc or docx extension. Okay, so Excel, if you're writing, if you're developing a spreadsheet on Excel, it would store as .xls or .xlsx extension. Okay, so you can choose to use any development environment. So this is so you can choose to use any development environment of your choice. It could be a simple programs like Sublime, Atom, Notepad++, etc. These are lightweight applications. It just allows you to write a Python code, and you cannot actually, it does not support some complex features. So some complex IDEs supports Eclipse, PyCharm, Microsoft Visual Studio, etc. So these complex IDEs would allow you to perform, would help you in your program writing journey by specifying what kind of syntax error you have made, or it allows you to, it comes with some extensive library and some additional powerful features. And you can run also the code in these complex development environments. You can also run, of course, by writing a program in Sublime or Atom, but you have to run these programs separately by executing Python, the file name with the Py extension, and it would execute your code. Some other browser or cloud-based UIs are also available, and um, you can have a look at all the Python IDEs. On this, IDEs stands for Integrated Development Environment. So you can have a look at all the environments, and you're free to choose whatever you want to choose. In this course, I'll be using Microsoft Visual Studio to demonstrate how you can write a code and how you can execute it using a terminal or with the help of an integrated features. So develop for some development environment, complex powerful features include text editor, integrated compiler or interpreter, and syntax highlighting, code completion, debugging, integration, and plugins. So you can have additional plugins for like additional programming languages like Java or HTML, CSS, whatever. Okay, so I'll keep this video until this point, and we will have a live demo in the next video.